This is the story of Sahagu, a 15-year-old Afghan girl whose courage in the face of unimaginable suffering brought a harsh reality into the light. Her story was not just about one girl, it reflected the struggles of many young girls and women in Afghanistan, especially those trapped in the cycle of child marriage and abuse. In Afghanistan, child marriage has long been a deeply rooted cultural practice. Families often marry off their daughters at very young ages, sometimes as young as 12, to settle disputes, pay dowries, or ease financial burdens. These marriages frequently deprived girls of education, freedom, and basic human rights. The tradition of child marriage was tied to the complex social and economic fabric of the country. Despite laws aimed at protecting women and children, enforcement was very weak, especially in rural areas where local customs outweighed the national law. Sahar's story began in this difficult context. At just 12 years old, Sahar was married to Ghulam Saki, a soldier significantly older than her. What followed was a nightmare no child should have to endure. Instead of a home filled with care and protection, Sahar was subjected to months of brutal abuse. Her husband and his family inflicted physical and psychological torture. They locked her in a basement, starved her, and subjected her to horrific acts of violence. Her fingernails were ripped out with pliers, and one of her ears was badly burned with an iron. She was beaten with cables and given electric shocks. These injuries left her physically broken and emotionally scarred. In a desperate bid for survival, Sahar escaped to a neighbor's house. There she pleaded for help, urging, "If you are a Muslim, you must tell the government what is happening to me." So the neighbors took her to the authorities, but the response was tragically insufficient. When the police arrived, Sahar's mother-in-law resisted fiercely, insisting that Sahar was property because a dowry of roughly £2,700 had been paid for her. Local leaders said the family promised to stop the abuse, and some alleged bribes were given to officials to cover up the case. Despite repeated pleas for help, Sahar was sent back to her abusers. This response highlighted a troubling reality in Afghanistan. Many communities preferred traditional mediation, where families settled disputes privately, often at the expense of the victim's safety and rights. Women's rights activists said this approach frequently denied justice to survivors of abuse. Instead of arresting abusers and enforcing the law, authorities often pressured families to resolve matters quietly. Sahar's case illustrated the conflict between long-standing cultural practices and the country's legal framework aimed at protecting women. After many months, a male relative discovered Sahar locked away in a dark cellar, starving and barely able to speak. Police were called again, and this time she was rescued. Sahar was taken to a hospital in Kabul where doctors began the long process of physical and psychological healing. Her injuries were severe. Broken fingers, missing fingernails, burns, and deep emotional trauma. Health officials dedicated a team of psychiatrists to support her mental recovery, but the scars of prolonged abuse would take time to heal. Despite the rescue, justice was slow and uncertain. Sahar's husband remained on the run, and although some family members were arrested and sentenced to prison, a Supreme Court judge later released them early, sparking fear and outrage. Sahar herself expressed her toil. She said, "They told me they would kill me if they ever got out. I was really afraid they would come after me." Her lawyer, Kimberly Motley, from the United States, appealed the court's decision, emphasizing that Sahar was just a child who deserved protection and justice. Sahar's story brought international attention to the plight of Afghan women. Over the past decade, progress had been made. Millions of girls attended school and many women entered the workforce and took on leadership roles. Yet these gains were fragile. Conservative forces and fears of political instability threatened to reverse the progress. Domestic violence remained widespread and many women suffered in silence. Campaigners reported that in recent months, dozens of women had died due to domestic violence, with some suffering brutal attacks like slashed throats or mutilation. Jeez. Afghanistan passed a landmark law against violence towards women several years ago, criminalizing domestic abuse and child marriage. However, enforcement remained a challenge. A UN report found that only a small percentage of crimes against women were prosecuted. Traditional customs, corruption, and fear often prevented women from seeking or receiving justice. Moreover, recent changes in laws and appointments to human rights bodies raised concerns about the future of women's rights in the country. Despite everything, Sahar remained determined. She spoke publicly about her ordeal, demanding that her abusers be punished. She said, "I wanted them back in jail and punished. They made me miserable. I wanted them to suffer the way I suffered." Her bravery inspired many Afghan women and international human rights advocates. It was a reminder that change was possible, but it required courage, awareness, and sustained efforts. Sahagu's story became a powerful call to action to protect the rights and dignity of every girl and woman, not only in Afghanistan but everywhere. Her survival was a testament to resilience, but it also reflected the urgent need for justice and education and cultural transformation. Together, the global community could support efforts to ensure no child suffered in silence and that every girl had the chance to live free, safe, and fulfilled. This brings me to my question. With how far back Afghanistan has gone in terms of the protection of women's rights and child's rights and basic human rights, how worse do you think it has gotten? How bad do you think it is? I mean, it worries me a lot. It worries me a lot, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.